Welcome to Exploring the Paranormal. Hosted by Heather Leigh, Ph.D., Exploring the Paranormal offers a new, fresh look into paranormal research. Join Heather as she discusses some of the many haunted locations worldwide, discusses why these locations are haunted, hear from paranormal researchers about their personal experiences at these locations. Additionally, Heather takes a journey into the science behind the paranormal, discussing topics such as thermodynamics and the Heisenberg Principle, and how they both affect paranormal activity. Now, your host of Exploring the Paranormal, Dr. Heather Leigh.
Hey everyone, I am so excited to have you guys join me for the first episode of Exploring the Paranormal. I hope you guys enjoy this as much as I am doing this show with WLTK, and I'm so grateful that Todd has brought me on. This is just going to be an amazing experience, and I hope you guys enjoy the ride with us. I wanted to start off real quick. Being my first show, not a lot of people know who I am, and if you guys do, thank you for following me. But I've been in paranormal research for more than 30 years. I have a Ph.D. in paranormal science, and my ultimate goal with this field is to kind of create an actual scientific method for us to use. We need to be more scientifically minded, and I'm just going to touch on that just a little bit, because in future shows, I'm going to be discussing various things such as the Heisenberg Principle and how that affects paranormal research, how thermodynamics can fuel paranormal activity, and a whole bunch of different things. This is going to be, I want to say, a roller coaster of fun things. We're going to talk about scientific activity or scientific research, along with paranormal activity in popular locations, such as later on, I'm going to be bringing on a guest, and we're going to be talking about some of the Ed and Lorraine Warren's famous cases and some cases that he worked on with them. So we'll talk about Joe a little bit later, and Joe's going to have plenty. He's a great guy. He's going to have plenty to say, and he's just going to fill you guys with a lot of information. And also, in addition to it, I'm an author. I've written recently, Haunted Southern Nevada Ghost Towns just came out from History Press. We appeared in the Real Haunts Ghost Towns and Real Haunts 3, which is coming out this year. I also do paranormal research in addition to just the scientific method. I'll go out and research why and how a location is haunted. And then I also focus on educating the public. I want to make sure that people aren't afraid of paranormal activity. I want people to know they're not alone. And I also want to help educate. I'm part of the Warren Legacy Foundation. So our goal is to educate, as Chris puts it, the next generation of paranormal researchers. So I'm also here to educate others. If you have any questions along the way, you can feel free to ask during the show. Send me a message at Dr. Heather Leigh on Facebook, or you can even reach out to the radio station and they'll make sure they get you in contact with me. Okay, sorry guys, I'm just a little bit nervous, but I'll take a few deep breaths and we'll get going. I do want to talk about the format of the show, because it is going to be a new show. I kind of want to give you guys an idea of what you can expect from the show format. Essentially, like I said, we're going to discuss all things paranormal, and that includes paranormal locations, the science behind the paranormal, and even just protection tips, which I will cover at the end of every episode. I'm going to give you guys a little protection tip on how to protect yourself. And just, it's kind of open. So if anyone has any ideas that there are questions they want to discuss, feel free to send that in as well. So I'm going to start off every show with the introduction, a book intro, and then I'm also going to start doing what I call a mailbag. I just have a generic question that everybody asked me, so I'm going to answer that today. But what the mailbag is if you send me a message on Facebook at Dr. Heather Leigh, I will put you in my little mailbag that I've created for the show, and I'm going to answer those questions. I'm going to answer one question a show. If there's a lot of questions, I may answer more, especially if the questions tie in together. Then from there, I'm either going to share a scientific research topic, experiment, or a haunted location based on who my guest is for the day. I'm also going to do the guest interview. So like today, I said I have Joe Franke. I didn't say Joe Franke, but I said I had a guest. So Joe Franke will be joining me. And then once that interview is done, I'm going to give you guys my final thoughts on the topic for the day, and then I'm also going to offer a paranormal protection tip or just a paranormal research tip in general. So real quick, I wanted to start off with my book that I wanted to introduce or to recommend. I'm sure many of you guys know who Brandon and Mustafa are from Ghost Hunters. And this book, I had purchased it right when he released it. And, I love how I've had Brandon as a guest on other shows, and he's thinks like I do. He's very scientifically minded. He wants to find out the science behind it. And it's just very interesting. This book talks about the elements of a haunting. Of course, he gives a new category list on hauntings, different categories for ghosts and spirits and interactions. They also talk about cases that they've done, sharing their experiences. They also they go into like how the case was set up, how the investigation was set up, what research they did. And it kind of gives you a step-by-step view of what we should be doing as researchers in this field, especially if we want to take that scientific approach. And the other thing I liked about this book is they go into paranormal malpractice, a code of ethics, and a whole bunch of other things on that. So I highly recommend that. If you guys have any questions about the book, feel free to ask me. And I'm hoping soon to get guests like Brandon and Mustafa on the show, just because, like I said, I've had Brandon on a previous show, and he was just an amazing guest. And so that's for that. And then, of course, like I said, I was going to cover the mailbag. For this one, I don't have any mail being the first show, so make sure you guys get your questions into me. But the question that I get asked all the time is, can the paranormal hurt you? And previously, up to about 4 or 5 years ago, I would say it could hurt you, but I didn't know for sure. But I'm going to share with you guys an experience that I had. And it completely changed how I viewed the paranormal field after that point. We were investigating a residential, and we had already gone into this home afraid. A previous team that our team went in first, but I wasn't part of the first team that went in. They came out and they were like, oh my goodness, this place is haunted. It's a demon, X, Y, and Z, and it's because of all these other things. So we were already on the defensive going into the home, which you never want to do. You always want to go in. Sure of your abilities, sure of yourself, sure of your team, and have confidence. Because otherwise, the paranormal can attack at any time, but they tend to go after the ones that are more afraid and more weak, at least in my experience. So we were in the home, and I was cleansing it at the end. Went through the whole investigation. We knew something was there. Turned out not to be demonic. It was just an angry ex-human. And I was cleansing the home, and I was in the bathtub. She had this big picture window, and all of a sudden something swept my feet out from underneath me. I went flying in the air and landed on my knees in the tub. Oh my goodness. My heart racing. First instinct being a mom, I got up and scolded it like it was a 3-year-old toddler that had done something wrong. I'm like, you don't do this. We don't treat people like this. And the energy stopped as soon as I scolded him. But that was my first actual physical attack in the paranormal field. And do I want to experience it again? No. Do I recommend anyone experience it? Not really. But the paranormal, to answer the question that I had, is the paranormal can hurt you. And it's scary, but you don't want that. And that's the problem. It is scary, but you don't want to be afraid. You don't want to have your clients be afraid. The more fear we put out there, the more paranormal activity is going to feed, especially the negative entities. They're going to feed off of that, the fear that's out there. So we want to do everything that we can to reduce the fear and do no harm. We want to make sure that when we go in to a client's home, we know what we're doing. We want to make sure that we know how we're doing it, and that we're not just there to stir up trouble and leaving the client with more problems than they had before we got there. So it's a tough call, but yeah, I learned real quick that the paranormal can hurt you. And so later on, I will share a protection tip and go over why protection works, and actually I'll discuss why protection works right now while we wait for my guest to join us in about 20 minutes. It's more or less, I call it the power of self-possession. And I was going to save this for a show down the road and do a whole show on it, but I'll touch on it now. Basically, the power of self-possession is if you are 100% sure of yourself, positive, happy, there's no room inside of you for anything to take over or cause harm. So if you've fully possessed yourself, an entity can't come in and possess you. If you're fully possessed, you're happy. You know you don't have that fear going into places. So the paranormal is less likely to cause harm and more likely to interact with you. And not always the case. So it's not the end all be all of protection, but it is one of the most powerful tools that I've ever had going into an investigation. It's more or less where if you're afraid, the power of self-protection also is less likely to have you self-manifest stuff. You're not going into an investigation already thinking there's going to be a ghost in this room, and then you go to that room and there's a ghost there. It's not going to be like that. You're not going to self-manifest. You're going to go in and actually find the facts behind what is haunting the location versus what you think is haunting the location. And again, like I said, I kind of went off track there for a little bit, but that is things we're going to discuss in future shows, including a whole bunch of different things. So for the mailbag, make sure you guys send me at Dr. Heather Leigh, and it's on Facebook. You can find me there, or you can even find Exploring the Paranormal Show is on Facebook as well. And there you can share information. If you have questions, show ideas, if you want a topic covered, feel free to share at those. Or like I said, you could also reach out to the radio station. Okay, now going on to, instead of covering a location or a scientific activity, I wanted to cover Annabelle. And this was kind of a last minute switch just because of my guest that's coming on in a few minutes. Everybody knows who Annabelle is. The Conjuring movies, of course, a lot of people have seen it. Ed and Lorraine Warren, pioneers in this field, started off paving the way for us. I mean, if it wasn't for them, we might not be where we're at in the field today. We might still be, I don't want to say back in the stone ages of the paranormal, but back in the early days of paranormal. We would still be trying to figure out if paranormal activity exists. We know it exists now. At least most of us, the believers. I mean, of course, you're going to have skeptics, and it's always good to be a skeptic going in. But it's one of those things where we know, at least in my heart, I know paranormal activity exists, especially from what I've seen, experienced, and researched. But it's one of those, I completely lost track of where I was going with that. We know it exists, but now we got to find out the how. How does paranormal activity exist? How does it manifest? And that we're never going to get around until we do some more scientific research. So we're needing more people like Ed and Lorraine Warren who go into an investigation, get the details, and then also focus on why it's being haunted and try to target the actual cause of the activity, not just the activity. It's one of those things where it was said to me a while ago is we want to treat this instead of masking the symptoms. So similar, actually, I'm going to backtrack a little bit there. And sorry if I babble, you guys stop me anytime. But it's one of those things where I've done a lot of writing, freelance writing. And one of the people I write for is a chiropractor. And a lot of the topics for his chiropractic blog is we're here to actually treat the root cause of the pain, not just mask your symptoms with medications. And I look at, ever since I've been writing that over and over and over, it's like ingrained in me now. I've kind of started more or less thinking the same way about the paranormal is as paranormal researchers and investigators, we need to go in and find what's causing the paranormal activity and then what's fueling it and remove what's fueling it. You know, just like in the medical field with chiropractor, if you're having back pain or, whatever, they go in and they actually treat the cause. What's causing the back pain? Is it a, herniated disc? Is it, and I'm getting medically, and I don't want to get medical on this show, but, I'm kind of trying to explain a little bit. So we want to go in and find out, is the haunting in the house caused because of an object? Did the homeowner do something intentionally or unintentionally? And once we find that root cause, such as in the case of Annabelle, we want to remove it. We want to help the person who's suffering from the activity actually move past. And if we just mask the symptoms by going in and doing an investigation and leaving, that's just making the homeowner feel good temporarily. Eventually, the activity is going to start again. We need to stop the person suffering from the activity from doing what they're doing, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, to cause the activity. We also need to go in and kind of offer help, just like with a doctor. If you have, for me, I have bad knee pain. I go home from the doctor with exercises I have to do. We send our clients, we don't send our clients home. We leave our clients home at giving them a list of things they can do. Sage, it works, but it's not a Sage is more of those masking the pain type of thing. But we also offer them tips on meditation, white light protection, what to do in their home. One of the biggest things that I always tell people is if their home is cluttered, is to go through and clean it up. Because if their home is in a chaotic state, paranormal loves that. Paranormal feeds on chaos. If people are always fighting, take the fights outside of the house. That's one thing that we always recommend people do. It's just get your life in order, and the paranormal activity may start to slow down. And then once we start nipping away at the different things that we think are causing the paranormal, that's when we can go in and say, okay, now let's fix it, because we know what's causing it. Because we took this out, that's not it. We took that out. Oh, hey, it's gotten better. Let's keep going down that road. And anyway, that just led me up to the fact that at the end with Annabelle, they ended up not actually removing the doll. And it was kind of interesting. I don't know a lot about the case. I'm learning more and more every day being part of the foundation. And it's kind of one of those, I've always been attracted to the Annabelle case and Amityville, which is another one that I'll talk about another day. But I do have a pair of Raggedy Ann and Andy dolls, which unfortunately are on the other side of the room, so I can't bring in. They're not really haunted by anything negative. I truly and firmly believe that the Raggedy Andy doll has an attachment to my grandfather, because when I was not in possession of the dolls, I didn't see or hear from him. And now that I have possession of the dolls again, I see him quite often. So that kind of led me to the research a little bit more as to why dolls get haunted. If you think about it, if you're looking for a vessel, you've passed on and you're looking for a vessel to move around, what's more like the body you're used to? A doll. Two arms, two legs, head, moves similar to a human being. And it's one of those things where I think that that's why most of the dolls seem to get haunted. But then also you have the self-manifestation aspect of it, which I know I'll have Chris McKinnell on in the future, but he talks about Annabelle differently than Ed Lorraine Warren did. He talks about her as being a self-manifestation, an egregore, or thought form. And what it is these two girls loved the doll. They had her sit with them at, dinner, lunch. She had a place at the table. They would set a table setting for her. They would talk to her, and they put so much love into this doll that they created her to become real. And when the doll was then no longer being loved like she was because her movements creeped out the girls, she kind of went ballistic. And that can happen. A lot of what we put into dolls and our personal objects cause paranormal activity after we go. And that's where you have the residual hauntings. And so getting back to Annabelle, it was in the 1970s. The one nurse, everybody knows. I mean, I want to say because you've all seen the movie, but the movies are so not what you would expect. They're very loosely based on it, but they do talk about some things that did happen. They started noticing this doll moving around, started getting a little creeped out. And then all of a sudden the activity picked up. They would notice the doll moving from one room to another. They were left notes that said, miss me. And it was written on parchment paper and crayon. I think it was crayon. But anyway, the parchment paper, they didn't own it. And it was actually an ancient form of parchment paper. And it just was something that they didn't have in the house, including what was actually used to write miss me. So they couldn't figure out where that came from. There was no explainable cause for that. Then the boyfriend one day woke up and he's like, or he woke up one night being attacked, because previously he's like, oh, that doll can't hurt me type of thing. And he woke up to Annabelle attacking him. During the activity, the girls did bring in a psychic medium who did end up saying that the doll was haunted by or possessed by a 7-year-old girl named Annabelle, which is where Annabelle pretty much got her name. And the psychics kind of, I don't want to say that they got it wrong, but they scared the girls even more, to the point where the activity ended up kicking up a little bit more. And then that's when the Warrens were called in. They were called in to help investigate the doll. And Joe might be able to give a little bit more information, because I'm going to also have Joe talk about his interactions with Annabelle, because he's actually been up close to her. And I want to find out more from him. But when the activity picked up, the Warrens came in and they said, no, they had a different opinion on it. They didn't think it was a girl. A little girl haunting it. They thought it was an actual demon. And they ended up doing a blessing of the home. And Lorraine Warren left with the doll. and they put it in a case that's regularly blessed and sealed. And it's interesting because that it goes back to the removing the problem. The doll was the problem for the girls, whether it really was a demon, whether it was just a little girl wanting attention, spirit of a little girl wanting attention, or whether it was an egregore. Regardless, the problem in that paranormal activity, the pain these girls were suffering was real. And having Ed and Lorraine Warren come in and confirm that it was real gave them comfort. And then the doll was the epicenter of whatever was happening. So removing that doll made everything, better for the girls. And we move on from there. So I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about my guest who's going to be coming. And we'll take a break, and then we'll be bringing Joe on with us. But it's going to be Joe Frankie. He is going to be joining me, like I said, after the break. And he is a great guy. I absolutely love Joe. Appeared at Phantasm with him. And we had a blast. We spoke on stage together about several things, including different cases that the Warrens did. He's been in the field. He can give you a better description than I can, but he's been in the field for many years. I think longer than I have, and I've been in 30 years. I think he's been in a little bit over 30 years. And the way he explains it, he does such a better job, so I'm going to let him do that. But he explains it as he was handpicked by Lorraine Warren. So his story is very interesting. He is now on the board of directors and chairman of the board for the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research. He is a lecturer. He's going around doing several lecture tours, and hopefully him and I will be doing a college lecture series soon. So stay tuned for that. And just the way he thinks about the paranormal, he's open-minded, but yet he also, with his experience, knows a lot more. I haven't called it to his face. So if he's in the green room waiting to come in, he's probably going to start laughing. But he's a walking encyclopedia of the paranormal. I don't want to say he's a know-it-all, or and he'll never let me call him an expert. But if you have a question, he's the man to go to. I go to him. I know a lot of our members of the foundation go to him for help. He's also very calm. He's just, if you want someone to help you with paranormal activity, Joe's the person to go to. He's just amazing. I can't even continue on. He's going to also talk about a whole bunch of different things. I'm writing a book right now called Florida Haunted. I'm getting that messed up. Haunted Florida Lighthouses. And we're going to touch a little bit on why he's in love with lighthouses. He's going to be writing my foreword for me. And he's the perfect guy for this. He loves lighthouses. And we were talking last night, and he's like, oh, I love lighthouses. And if they're haunted, it's a bonus. So it's really interesting. And he's very laid back, and I don't know what else I could say about Joe, but we will be bringing him on soon to talk a little bit more about the Warrens, because he worked firsthand with them. Down the road, I will be bringing on Chris McKinnell, who also worked with the Warrens. And I'm going to be thinking about, I have an idea for next show's topic, but I'm working on that as well. So I also want to go back to, I had mentioned egregore. And it's not a term that a lot of people use. It's the more term that most people hear is thought form, or, a self-manifestation. And I wanted to bring up the idea of how Annabelle could have been possibly possessed, or how Annabelle came about. Is, like I said, she was around the dining room table with the girls. They treated her and loved her. And that kind of takes me back to the Philip experiment, which happened in Canada. And this is where a group of friends gathered around, and they just started talking about their dearly departed friend, Philip. And Philip never existed. But after several weeks, they did it the same day, same time, for weeks, months, and they just continued doing it. Then they brought in the paranormal equipment. They started investigating it. They started researching it. They started talking to Philip, and they actually started getting responses. The experiment actually has everybody believing that Philip came about because he was a thought form. Then you have others who believe that Philip really, or just kind of was a spirit that was there and is now taking advantage of it. It's like, oh, they're talking to someone. I'm going to pretend I'm Philip. A couple different stories on how that happened, but it is interesting. But that kind of goes on to the egregore. Popular egregores are Slender Man, the Rake, a whole bunch of different things could be causing it. I mean, when it comes to the paranormal, if you're dealing with anything negative, whether it's a negative entity or you yourself are experiencing something negative happening in your home, is you're afraid, and you kind of build up on that fear. And that's where the paranormal feeds on it, whether it's an egregore, thought form, an actual demon, which again, we will discuss is very rare. And it's kind of one of those things where you want to make sure that you eliminate that fear. And I am going to do a little bit more talking about Joe before we go to break, and then I'll bring Joe on. And I'm just waiting for our break to come up in a few minutes here. So if you guys have any questions, like I said, feel free to ask. You can even ask questions on Facebook pages or send them to the station. But getting back to Joe, and I see he's here now. So yes, I'm going to say it. He is the walking encyclopedia of the paranormal. So now he's heard it, and he's probably over there dying laughing. But he's the go-to guy. So if you ever want to learn more about Joe, Google search Joe Franke and the Warrens. You could also see Joe on the Warren Files, which is the Warren Legacy Foundation's research page. The Warren Files on Facebook, on YouTube, has a lot of old videos where Joe has joined in. And we talk about all things paranormal with that. And our ultimate goal in the foundation is to create less fear, help those suffering from paranormal activity, whether it's self-manifested, whether it's, even if it's psychiatric based. It's not saying that just because someone's having psychiatric issues is causing paranormal activity, but it seems to go hand in hand. If people are depressed or have certain conditions, they tend to attract paranormal. So, and it's nothing bad. I'm not, so don't jump all over me for saying that, because every time I say something like that, I get jumped all over. But it just, we need to be able to treat the person as well as the paranormal activity. There's so much more to this field, and that's what I'm hoping to do with this show, is to open up everyone's minds, help you guys, think for yourself. There's so many shows out there, and the shows are fun, interesting, and entertaining. I get that. I mean, we were in a documentary that had entertaining moments, and I was talking with Todd before the show. If you had seen what had happened behind the scenes, you guys would be dying laughing. It's so not what is seen on TV. The paranormal, in a lot of cases, is far worse than what you see on TV. The paranormal, in reality, is a lot far worse than what you see in the Conjuring movies. It's not fun and games, but you can still have fun and joke and laugh, because the happier you are, the more protected from the paranormal you'll be. And I kind of lost my train of thought. The more protected, and the more activity you'll get, more positive activity you'll get. That's where I was looking for. But if you're negative, go in afraid, and don't try to help make your clients feel happy and safe. You're just going to be attracting negative energy yourself, and it's just going to make things worse. And those are all things that we will cover in future shows, because I do firmly believe that there is a scientific backing behind all paranormal activity, including positive and negative energies. It's just, we have to find a way to unlock that. And we're never going to unlock it if we stay closed-minded. So again, we need to be open-minded, and also listen to both sides of the story. You're going to have people on one side of the story and people on the other side of whatever experiment or whatever haunting. I mean, we get that all the time, just like I had mentioned Annabelle earlier. We have people who think she's a thought form, and then we have people who think she's a demon. Others think she's just a little girl. Listen to all the different sides, and everybody's entitled to have their own opinion. It's when we argue over it and cause these little infightings that we do, that's when we're of no use to any of our clients or anyone in the field. We want to be able to, I don't want to use the word para-unity, because I view para-unity differently than a lot of people do. I don't think we should support everyone blindly, because there's a lot of people in this field that are just here for paranormal tourism, which is perfectly fine. If you want to go investigate haunted locations and learn more about the paranormal, that's fine. Go for it. But it's the researchers and the investigators who actually are out to help people that we need to focus on getting along. We need to listen to each other. And we also need to take time to, trying to think of the words, but we need to take time and just listen. There's too much, even the serious researchers in this field, there's too much arguing based on what they see on TV. And they're not open-minded to what is really happening because they saw someone on TV do it this way. even with one experiment, and that's what I'm going to show you throughout this show in future shows, is when I show you an experiment or talk about a haunted location, I'm going to talk about all sides of the story. I'm going to show you multiple ways to use to do the investigation and do the research or even practice the different experiments. There's so much more to this than people know. And that's why I want to do this show. So we're coming up on 10:30, so we're getting ready for a break. And then when we come back from break, I will bring Joe Franke on and introduce you guys to my guest.
The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.
Hi, everybody. This is Patty Negri.
Hi, I'm Pete Orbea.
Hi, this is Nicole Strickland.
My name is Hero.
My name is Sean Klein.
Hey everybody, Cleet Keith here, author of Ghost of Greystone Beverly Hills. I'm excited to invite you to the OC Paracon, which is going to be the first week in October.
Now that's just some of the people you're going to meet at Orange County Paracon. That would be Anaheim's first ever paranormal conference. I'm Henry, the organizer and also the host of Paranormal Perception, inviting you to meet those people that you just saw. You'll meet everybody, including some guests, some people that we haven't even announced on the website. It's going to be a surprise. Everything, info, tickets available on that website, ocparacon.com. Hope to see you to kick off our favorite time of the year in Anaheim at OC Paracon.
Take us with you on the go and download the new WLTK-DB mobile app. Search the App Store and Google Play under WLTK-DB Talk Radio. Download free today. The unexplained. It's all around us and usually supplies more questions than answers. You need answers. You need Cross Country Paranormal. Founded by Benjamin Young, CCP seeks to train, educate, and mentor anyone that has a passion for the paranormal. CCP is building a network of teams and investigations across the country, and all experience levels are welcome. Learn more about CCP on their website, ccpinvestigations.com, where you can find frequently asked questions, check out their equipment, follow their latest events, and of course, shop. Visit them now at ccpinvestigations.com. That's ccpinvestigations.com. Cross Country Paranormal. All are welcome. All are family.
This is WLTK-DB Talk Radio.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Thank you for sticking around with us. And now I'm excited to introduce Joe Franke. This man, if you know him, you know him. If you don't, you need to get to know him. He is absolutely amazing. Like I had talked earlier, he is actually one of our members of the Paranormal Foundation, Warren Legacy Foundation, also says is he's a walking textbook. So let's welcome Joe Franke to the show. And hey, Joe, how are you doing?
You guys, hi Heather.
Good. I see you have Annabelle behind you.
Yeah, she stopped in for a visit.
Yep. And she was actually the topic of conversation earlier, so we'll touch on her for a little bit. But I want to say real quick, good morning to everybody in the chat. Thank you for chatting. I was so wrapped up in reading my notes earlier that I lost track of the chat. But welcome, and I will get to some of your questions as we go on, because I see there's some questions that Joe can actually help answer. So Joe, why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about yourself and how Lorraine Warren handpicked you to be in this field?
Oh boy, So, my name is Joe Franke. I've been involved in this field for 36 plus years. I met the Warrens at one of their conferences many, many years ago, back in 1986. My wife had actually seen in the local newspaper that the Warrens were doing a lecture one town over. It was a Friday night, and she said, "Would you like to go?" I'm like, "Yeah." I've always been fascinated by the subject. So we went, and we're walking up to the table. And Lorraine was sitting at the table, or actually she was standing. And she looked at me, and she kind of cocked her head to the side. I remember this, and she says, "Honey, have we met before?" And I said, "No, Lorraine." I said, "We haven't. I've never met you guys before. I've heard a lot about you. I've seen your print media. I've seen you on television." she's looking at me, and I found out later what she was doing. She was reading my aura, that supernatural glow that surrounds, and every one of us have an aura. And she's like, "There's a reason why you're here tonight. Can you come and see Ed and I after the show?" So I'm like, "Yeah." So here I'm, like 18 years old. I'm sitting in the audience and watching the show, but I can't keep a thought in my head because I'm like, "Wow, what she want to talk to me about?" And so anyway, after the show, we go out to a diner across the street, and she sat across from me, and she's holding my hand, and she's just reading my aura. She explained to me what she was doing by that point. And she's like, "Honey," she goes, "I can tell by your aura that you were meant to do this work." She said, "Would you be interested in coming and working with Ed and I?" And I'm like, "Wow, yeah." I mean, I was shocked. I had to pinch myself. And I said, "Absolutely." So what they did was they would have classes. The Warrens actually held classes at a little place in Connecticut called Hawley Manor in Newtown, Connecticut. It was a little back closet of a room. And we would go, it'd be Monday nights, every Monday night for about an hour, hour and a half. And Ed would bring in his tape recorder and his case notes. Matter of fact, I have one of his tape recorders. Yeah. My good friend Chris, who's a grandson, gave me this tape recorder. This is one of Ed Warren's original tape recorders that he used on cases. I don't know which cases. I mean, that could be very well be one of the tape recorder he used on Amityville, for all I know. But, so he would sit there and he would play tapes, audio tapes of the interviews and any spirit voices that he captured. He would go over the notes and tell us exactly what happened. And I'm sitting there like goosebumps. Again, I'm a teenager, and a lot of people ask me, "Well, Joe, were you scared?" I go, "Yeah, I was scared. I'm human. Of course I was scared. I was frightened, but I was more intrigued than anything else." So we would do these classes like every Monday night, and the classes would move after they moved out there. They moved to a haunted restaurant, and a few years later, but we can get to that later. So anyway, we go on with the Warrens. They used to have these things called the Ghost Safari. And what that was everyone would meet at a restaurant close to where the Warrens lived. We'd all meet in the parking lot. Everybody would take their own cars, and we would drive to locations with the Warrens. We'd all get out of our cars, make a circle, and Ed and Lorraine would then go on to explain what happened at that location. So, I remember we went to a church parking lot, and they were saying this is where an exorcism was performed. And, we'd go to another location outside of a two-story house and said, well, the second floor, had activity, and you couldn't really be in there after 9 o'clock at night because all hell would break loose. And, I'm sitting there just, making mental notes and just fascinated and in awe of all these stories. And they're real, they're true. So at the last stop on the tour was a place called Dudleytown. I don't know if anybody's heard of Dudleytown, Connecticut, the first village. And Ed had just been coming off his first heart attack at that point from the case in Massachusetts. And so he couldn't make the trek down there. Dudleytown, it was a good, from where we had to park, it was about a mile and a quarter hike to get there. And it was rough terrain. That area, the Appalachian Trail goes through that area. But this particular part of the trail was covered with, rocks and felled trees and things like that. So it was kind of a hike, and he wasn't able to do that. So the Warrens stayed behind, and they had another young gentleman with them that knew the terrain, and he took us down there. And you wouldn't know, you'd probably walk right past these foundations if you didn't know what you were looking for. Because all that's left is the old stone foundations. There's no wood left, and that's all rotted away over the years. So, long story longer, we get back to the Warrens, and by that point, we did one more circle, and everyone disbanded. It was the end of the tour. So, Ed and Lorraine jump in their car, and their car won't start. And Ed's like, "Oh, damn, I think I ran out of gas." Because he said he was low on gas, but he's like, I was sure I had enough to get to the gas station. So everyone left, and Laurel and I were the only two people left, really. So I'm not going to leave them here. So I said, well, let me take a look at it. I popped the hood. So he pops the hood. I grab my toolbox out of my car. I always carry my toolbox with me. And so I take the air cleaner off and everything, and I'm looking and I'm pumping the gas, and I'm like, well, you're getting gas into the carburetor. So you have gas, but it just kept cranking and cranking and cranking. So I'm thinking, I'm working on this thing for 20, 30 minutes, and I had a thought. It just kind of popped into my head. And I'm like, could it really be that simple? I said, Ed, could you hop out for a second? Let me take a look. So I go into the fuse box. I open up the fuse box, and I find the fuel pump fuse, and I pull it out, and it's blown. There's a 15-cent blown fuse. So I said, okay, he didn't have an extra fuse, so I pulled the one out of the radio, popped it in there, and it started right up. Boy, they were so happy. I mean, Lorraine was thrilled. She's like, come on, kids, it's still early. Let's go. We're taking you to dinner, So we went to dinner. After dinner, we goes, oh, come on, kids, it's still early. Let's go back. I want to show you the museum. Okay. So we end up back at their house and took me for a tour. And that's when he really told me about what happened to them after Amityville. And we're standing in the kitchen area, and to the right of me is a stairway that leads down the stairs to what I found later was his Halloween room. All decorated for Halloween, and it was that way year round. A bunch of his paintings would be hanging on the wall because it was a painter. I have one behind me. You can see it. It's one of his original paintings. And he had a full life-size coffin in the room with like a wax dummy in it. It was really creepy, but really cool too. So he's telling me a story. He's like, yeah, when we got back from Amityville, he said that very night, we're in the kitchen and I heard this loud rattling noise, like thunderous noise, like sheet metal rattling. If you've ever heard that, take a sheet of sheet metal and you shake it back and forth. And he said, all of a sudden, he goes, I look and I see this big black mass come up from the basement stairs. And he said, there was this big black mass. It was about as tall, almost as tall as the ceiling. And it was standing right in front of me. And I'm like, I'm listening to him. I could feel every hair on my body is standing up. And I said, where did that happen? He goes, right about where you're standing. So I'm like, okay, I didn't need to hear that, So he took me down into the museum. This was the first time I went to the museum. And we're standing there, and Laurel's next to me, and he's showing me Annabelle, of course, and all the other artifacts. And he's explaining about them. And he goes, okay, I'll be right back. I got a phone call. Lorraine called me on a phone call or something. He goes, don't touch anything. So I take my hands and shove them in my pockets. I'm like, okay. He's like, don't touch anything. All this stuff could have residual energy attached to it, and you don't want it mixing with your energy. Okay. So he's gone just for a couple of minutes, and I look up, and he had these magazines. I think it was Fate magazine. You remember that? I don't even know if that's still a publication, but he had these magazines in these plastic sleeves, and they were tacked onto the rafter above us. And I look up, and actually Laurel pointed it out. She goes, why are those things moving? I said, I don't know. They started moving like this, and then all of a sudden they started swaying. All of them. There's about 6 or 8 of them. Ed comes back in, he sees that, and he goes, come on, kids, we got to get out of here. It's not safe to be in here. So, that was like my introduction into this. I learned from them, firsthand. They were my mentors. And I became like family to them. I always say, Lorraine thought of me as her adopted grandson, because I was around for so long. And unfortunately, when she passed, I had seen her about a week or so before she passed, because Chris used to live up in the apartment upstairs. So I would visit him frequently and try to help him with things. And she just got, obviously she was 92 years old, and she was not well. Getting a little choked up. Sorry, guys. I miss them so much. And, Ed's been gone he died in 2006, but, he got ill in 2001. And she kept him home with round-the-clock nurses for 5 years. Their love was, it was amazing how much they loved each other. And people asked, what were they like? I said, they were like any other normal grandparents. It's like when people ask about me, I'm like, yeah, I'm just an ordinary guy with an extraordinary hobby, so to speak. So sorry to get so long-winded, but that's how I met them. I met them through one of their lectures, and they actually chose me
Mhm.
It's not like I had to apply or win a raffle or whatever. They chose me to come work with them because she could tell by my aura that I was meant for this work. And
Mhm.
I tell people this isn't an occupation; it's a vocation.
Yeah.
This was something I was called to do, and lo and behold, I'm 54 years old now, and I'm still involved in the work. And
Mhm.
my passion is to help people and also try to educate people. I heard you mention before that a lot of people get into this work for the wrong reasons.
Mhm.
They're in there for either thrill seekers. They want to grab whatever evidence they can get, throw it on their YouTube channel, or get their 15 minutes of fame on television. I'm not about any of that. I've never submitted a clip to YouTube or anything like that. That's not what I'm in this work for.
Yeah. But you might have to, because that's how you get people to know about what the real way to do
Oh,
stuff is.
yeah, I gotta get more technically savvy with that stuff. But
That's why you
usually,
have Jeff.
yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of friends like yourself and your family, and Bill and Jeff and all the regional foundation regional directors that are more technically savvy than myself. My job is I just want to pick up my bag, and go and try to help people with their paranormal afflictions.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, one question that was brought up actually before you even came on the show, so it was based on my talking about the foundation and some of the hauntings that they've dealt with, is so the Warren Foundation is still saying Amity was legit. What are your thoughts on both sides of that story?
Well, you got to understand when the Amityville case came across their desk, so to speak, it wasn't the Amityville horror. It was just another haunted location, potentially haunted location. I believe, based on what my mentors told me, that this was a very real case. Um, it's not what you read in the book or saw in the movies. Obviously, the book took liberties, the movie took a lot of liberties. But some of the things did happen. The thing where the priest went into the sewing room and heard "Get out." Most people would be like, "I'm not, I'm gone." There were like a lot of flies and everything, but the movie embellishes and, like I said, takes a lot of liberties. But a lot of things went on in that house that people probably don't know about, even before the murders were done. Ronald DeFeo, I think he was 20 years old, something like that. They found out later that he was kind of into like black magic, and maybe satanic worship. And told me a story that he said one day he was down in the basement and they found like a kind of a makeshift wall, and behind that wall was like a room with like an altar, like ritualistic items that they use for black magic and summoning and things like that. I remember him telling me that. And he tells the story that he felt like pressure on him in the basement, like a waterfall. Water was pouring down on him. He says like somebody took a wet blanket, threw it over him, and it kind of knocked him to the ground. And he said, I made the sign of the cross. I think he told me he took out a bottle of holy water. He said a good investigator always carries holy water, with him. And he said this thing lifted off of him. And he said, Joe, I remember him saying this to me. He said, Joe, I never touched the stairs. He goes, I got out of there as fast as I could. Okay. I mean, again, they were human too. They were scared. Of course they were scared. And almost simultaneously while that was happening in the basement, Lorraine was up on the landing on the second floor, and she felt like this presence pushing against her, like it wasn't letting her go any further. And she said, I remember her saying, she goes, that's the closest to hell I ever hope I ever get. So yes, I believe the stories. I believe what they told me is true. The movie, and I don't believe a lot of what happened in the movie, because they said, yeah, that never happened. But a lot of this stuff did happen. And that family, the Lutz family, after they purchased a home, moved in, they were there for 28 days. That's it. And when they fled the house that night, okay, they never went back. And the only thing Ed told me, he said, the only thing they asked us to get when we went into the house was the deed to the property. Okay? They left all their clothing, furniture, valuables behind. I mean, Kathy had like furniture and china from her grandmother. They didn't want any of it. They just wanted to get out of there. and they got as far away as they could. They moved to California.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I believe that this family was terrorized by something. You know, I wasn't there. I think I was 6 years old at the time. It happened in '74, I believe, 1974.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, don't believe everything you see on television. You know, because you know it may be like air quotes based on a true story, but you got to understand that. And Heather, I know you know this. When you go on an investigation, you could be there for days, weeks, months, years, before you may see or capture something. And it's not like these people are making it up. In their minds, it's very true, real, very true. But I'll go out there and, I'm like, well, it's not that I don't believe you, but, nothing's going on. I don't sense anything. Or it may be hiding from you. It may not want its identity revealed. It wants to hide in the shadows. Ed told me many times, he's like, Joe, spirits don't come on your time. They come on their time. They come when they're ready. There is no time or distance in the spirit. They're very patient. He said they're going to wait for you to be at the most vulnerable point of your life. Whether you're depressed or maybe, you have substance abuse issues, alcoholism, drug addiction, things like that. Those are targets. Those are people I call victim souls. Those are the ones they go for. They prey on the weak. Someone like me wouldn't necessarily be a target because I'm not weak. And I'm not talking about physical strength. I'm talking about emotional, spiritual, psychological. You got to prepare your mind and your body for these cases when they go on.
Yeah, and that's what I touched on. Yeah, that's what I touched on just before you joined, is about the power of self-possession, where if you're fully possessed in your beliefs and truly believe you know what you're doing and that you are confident, you're less likely to be attacked severely, even though it still happens.
Yeah, it does. And I tell people when I lecture, I say, listen, because people are like, well, Joe, were you ever attacked? I'm like, yeah, I've been punched, kicked, bitten, scratched, picked up and thrown across the room. I was 350 pounds at the time. I mean, on this case, I'll never forget that because that's the first time I was physically like a train heavy, and it threw me up against the wall. Mm-hmm. And I was scared out of my mind, but I was more pissed off at the time than scared. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm like, what was that? And I'm like, I got up and I was pissed. I'm like, what else you got? Come on, Mm-hmm. And it's just a macho side of me at the time. I was maybe in my early 20s, and I was angry. But I say, if you take a stick and you poke a tiger with the stick, don't poke the bear kind of thing. Eventually, they're going to take a swat at you.
Right.
They're going to take so much, and then they're going to take a swat at you. So, the analogy would be that, if I'm in a place that's alleged to have, a demonic infestation or something, and you're using religious provocation, which is what Ed taught us to do. He said, you got to be very careful. He said, but what you do is you invoke the name of Jesus Christ. He said, in the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to reveal your identity to me. And he was very, very thorough, I would say, on how he trained us to do that. Do I like to do it? No. People are like, oh, geez, I had a colleague once tell me, oh, geez, I'd like to be scratched. I'd like to be able to, just so I could experience that. And I said, what are you, nuts? I said, you don't want that. So after hearing some of my case stories and things, he's like, you know what, Joe, I changed my mind. I don't want that. I said, no, you don't. Mm-hmm. It's not fun.
No, it definitely, and you never know until you experience it. And I tell people, because I get the same thing, oh, I wish I could get, thrown in the air like you were. And it's like, no, you don't.
Scared the bejesus out of me. It's even today, if it happened today, I'd be very unnerved by it because, I mean, you just picked up and, I was lifted off the ground, literally, off my feet. And, Casper the Friendly Ghost can't do that. They don't have that kind of power. Negative human spirits have certain power. They can scratch you or strike you or something like that. But to have the strength like that was something bad. That was something really evil.
Yeah. But we have a couple questions popping up in the chat. But I do want to. It's a question I meant to ask you when I saw you in Orlando and when I saw Chris in Orlando as well. Is what's up with the dinosaur in the museum?
The dinosaur in the museum was from the Galazzo case, which was in Brookfield, Connecticut, which is the Conjuring 3 movie was based on, with Arnie Johnson. That was, David Galazzo was possessed by this demon. And Arnie Johnson was dating Debbie, David's older sister. And he would get attacked. The little boy, would I think it was like 8 or 9. He would get attacked by this demon, and it eventually had taken over his body. Because you have infestation, oppression, and then through subjugation, you have possession, and that's the final stage. So one time this happened, and Arnie, they're watching David struggle with this thing, and he grabbed him, and he's like, "Leave him alone. Come into me. Take me." And that was an invitation, and it did. And then I don't know if everyone knows the story about Arnie Johnson, what happened, but he became oppressed, possessed by whatever this demon was, and he ended up killing someone. He stabbed someone, I think, 27 times, and they died. And that was one of the first case, I think it may be the only case, but where the Warrens were involved, where when it went to trial, he was defended as a case of possession. And Arnie, went to prison for 5 years for it, and was, I believe, successfully exercised to remove the demon. But that's a harrowing story. And but I'm sorry, get back to the question. The dinosaur was one of David's toys, and the dinosaur, according to Ed Warren, what he told me, the dinosaur was witnessed by multiple people walking and talking, like a voice would come out of it. And I've been this close to the dinosaur. I wouldn't touch it, but get up right on it, and I'm looking at it, I'm studying it, taking pictures of it. But just to think, I mean, it's just a plastic purple dinosaur, but the stories, when I'm thinking about the story as I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, I don't want this thing. And it's not even in the case either. It's just kind of displayed in the museum, unless that's changed since the last time I was there. But
I saw it in a case similar to Annabelle's, but that could have just been for show.
Well, when I haven't been in the museum in a few years, but I was in there thousands of times, or at least hundreds of times over the years. But when I was looking at it, it was just kind of like on the floor or on the shelf. But they might have things encased now. When the Warrens passed away, Tony, his son-in-law.
Kind of like when they used to keep Annabelle on a rocking chair in the house.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We could talk about that too if you want. But I got my rocking chair here and my Annabelle. She hasn't moved though, so.
You might self-manifest it. You never know, or something. Yeah. You might bring something home that'll be like, ooh, a doll.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of truth to that though. People that go antiquing and things like that, objects can have attachments to them. And sometimes they do, but you just never know. So you got to be careful.
That's why you always read the object before you bring it home.
There
are things I've picked up at the antique store, and it's like, no, I'm not bringing you home with me.
Yeah, well, in Florida, if you remember, the girl that was across from us had some haunted objects, and there were a couple objects. One was including the mirror, if you remember that mirror. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, there's something attached to that mirror, something about the mirror. And I was talking to her, and she had them all out in display, and they weren't protected, and she was allowing people to touch them. And I'm like, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I said, if you just, I don't even know if she knew who I was, but I said, just my 2 cents, you may want to put up a sign that says, please do not touch, because you don't want that.
Yeah, that was, I didn't look too much at it because I don't know, something was repelling me from it. So
she had a couple of items there that even creeped me out. Chris and I were looking at these things and like, yeah, that thing's got something attached to it, or that came from a house where bad things happen, or something like that. And the Warrens would remove objects like the Annabelle doll. They were asked, they're like, can you take this off of our hands and get it out of here? And that's when they brought it back, and they started their for lack of a better term, museum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. More of a storage place.
Well, yeah, and then they would have some prayers. Put it in a case. Eventually, they would have prayers. I think it's called circular herbalism, around the case to keep whatever evil energy contained within that case. But still, you don't want to take any chances and touch the doll. I don't know why they move the doll and they take it on the road sometimes when they do their
and I've seen when they move Annabelle, they wear gloves, and just to me, it's like those gloves aren't going to stop it if it's as
no. I don't know. I lost you. I think he froze up, Heather. I don't know if you guys can hear me, but I believe my personal belief is that's a false sense of security. I don't think that would be adequate protection, but that's just my personal opinion. I wouldn't want to do it. I mean, I have held the doll before. I had me move it one time.
Like a baby. Here, hold her
you
for a
want to
minute.
handle it? But it's really when we talk about things like Ouija boards and items that have attachments. Just because you touch it doesn't mean you're going to get possessed. When I lecture, people are like, "Am I going to bring something home to me just from coming and listening to you tonight?" Like, no. I said, and I'm not saying that just because you may have used the Ouija board in the past that you're going to have a problem. However, the Ouija board is just a game. It's a board game. I think Parker Brothers makes it, Bradley or whatever. But it's the intent behind it. It's the context in which you use that board. If you're using that board with the intention of conjuring spirits, you don't even need a Ouija board. You can just do a seance or even a spirit box session. You're basically inviting these things, hey, if you're here, come and talk to us. Or, like some people on TV, yeah, if this is the gates of hell, why don't you come up and get us? I'm like, oh, dude, people know what you're doing. Because they will. Right. Maybe not now, maybe not 10 years from now, but 10, 15, 20 years down the road, when you've long forgotten about what you did and said on TV for the sensationalism, you're going to be sorry.
Yeah. I always train and teach people that the Ouija boards are no different than a spirit box or EVP session.
Yep, that's exactly what I just said.
Yep, and that even I use pendulums, and it's no different than that either because I have a pendulum board that's it's essentially a Ouija board, but it's round. And you got to know what you're doing. Even with EVP sessions, you need to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you can cause, like you said, havoc just the same as a Ouija board can do it.
Yeah, and you know what? Usually when you or I get called into a case, it's because a paranormal team, I'll use that term loosely, but, and I'm not trying to knock anybody out there. I'm just saying, if you don't know what you're doing, admit that to yourself. Because if you can put a team together because you watch a lot of television. Oh, that's my training. I watch TV shows. And I just shake my head. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I could do that. I go out and buy a computer, some camera equipment, go to a ghost hunter store and buy all this stuff. I don't have this stuff. I have a tape recorder, I have a couple of cameras, that's it. I don't need this stuff. If you have something of intelligence that wants to communicate, it will. It can.
Yep.
But these folks, they go out on an investigation. A lot of them do public stuff, public ghost hunts, a cemetery, an old building, or whatever. And just a quick disclaimer: please make sure you ask for proper information. Okay, which most people don't. I've found. If you're going to go in an old alleged haunted building, ask permission if you can. Find the owner, whoever owns the property, and ask them. They're probably going to say no. This is why people just go. But not only, number one, it's a safety thing. You get hurt there or something. Now the owner could be liable for that, even though you broke in. But anyway, I digress. I'm sorry. So
it's all things people need to know.
Well, I know. I'm so passionate about this. As you know, Heather, I love to talk about it. That's why my lectures go so long. I don't know when to shut up. As I said, I have the right to remain silent. I just don't have the ability. To quote Ron White, I need some credit for that line. So, when a family contacts you and they're genuinely frightened, they got something going on, or at least they feel they do. you know, that family's looking to you for some help and some guidance and some answers, you know. And when you get a group that goes in, and then God forbid something should happen, and then they basically run out of the house and leave the family hanging, that's usually when we get called. You know, that's when we get a call, and I'll get a call either from the family or get a call from the paranormal teams. Like, Joe, we were out at this house, and you know what? We're in over our heads. We don't know what to do. I'm like, well, why were you out there? Or they'll actually say to me, well, we were performing a Ouija board session. And I'm like, why? Well, I'll never forget this one team who contacted me, and they thought it would be fun to go out on a Halloween night with a Ouija board out to an old cemetery and try to conjure the spirits. I said, the spirits of the deceased bodies that are there are not hanging around the cemetery. Why would they? It's just their physical shell is there rotting in the ground, or third, you know, dust to dust, whatever. I said, but why? Because their evil is always lurking. You know, I mean, you have, in my belief anyway, you have good and you have evil, the yin and the yang. It balances out the universe. You know, and God gives us our own free will. God's just got to step in and say, this is my child, don't touch him. God gives us our free will. You know, and you know, he's probably sitting up there shaking his head going, oh my God, I can't believe I made this person that stupid. You know, but they want to go out and they'll record this stuff many times because, like, oh, if something happens, we can throw this up on YouTube and get 1 million hit views and make money on it. And then you're affected for the rest of your life, psychologically and sometimes physically. You know, but I had a recent case in Rhode Island where something like that happened. This group went out to this home and they were messing around, and something happened. I guess a can of caviar was out in the kitchen and it exploded. And you know, inexplicably, it just kind of, as they put it, exploded, and the top of the can went flying. They got so freaked out. The owner told me they couldn't leave fast enough. They're like, yeah, well, you know, this is over our heads kind of thing. And they left, and then they never called the guy back and would return their phone calls. And, you know, when I first heard about it, I think you might have been part of the conversation, I'm not sure. But when I first heard about it, I said, well, I hope this group has taken down their social media sites and left the work. But no, they're still out there. They're still out there doing investigations. I'm like, you know, all your credibility is in the garbage. I mean, you know, all I have for me, I've always said, is my name and my integrity. And neither one of them are for sale. You know, that's why I don't do these TV shows anymore. I mean, if I do a TV show, it's gonna be done right. You know, you know, otherwise you get lost in all this noise. There's so many TV shows coming at it from different angles, and they always got their own, you know, little shtick. And you know, well, we're going to do it this way, and you know, it's entertainment, folks. That's what it is. And if you read the fine print at the end of the show, you know, for entertainment purposes, the disclaimer. Yeah, they are. Some of these shows are done well, and you know, the way that they're produced and directed, but they don't accurately depict how an investigation takes place. You can't, you know, take an investigation. Some of them you're working on for years, months and years. I've had cases that have gone on for years. You can't condense that down into a half hour or an hour TV show. And of course, always at the end of the show, they're like, oh, the family is now happy and you know, no activity, all activity is reported to have stopped. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, you know, and people believe it. And I think you mentioned earlier, you know, we get a bad rap because like, well, oh, that's not how so-and-so does it. And he's got a TV show, so he must know what he's doing. I'm like, really? That's not the way it works.
That's when we start needing to use these shows in our lectures and be like, this is not what you do, and then show us doing it, and this is how you do it.
Yeah, I don't like to call people out publicly. You know, I just try to be respectful. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But let me tell you, though, some of these people that are on these TV shows have all kinds of problems. Physical problems, emotional problems, psychological problems. And could it be attributed to the work? I think absolutely. Could I prove it? No. You know, so these are my theories, but it's based on a lot of years of knowledge and experience. You know, I think it's safe to say that, you know, at my age now, I've done my time and I'm still doing it. But I never would say I know everything, because I don't. I'm still learning. I'm learning every day. I'm learning from you. I learn from all our other colleagues. I don't care if you've been doing this work for 4 months or 40 years. We all need to treat each other with equal respect. But I always say, keep your humility in check. Don't get an ego, or keep your ego in check. It's the ego, and once people start getting noticed, and, get a TV show, their heads swell, and I won't say too much about that because that aggravates me, but it's the people, that are humble, that stay in the background, that don't I'm not comfortable with the limelight myself, but I have to step into it to get my message out. And I love to talk about the subject, and I love to educate. I feel like I'm carrying on the Ward's legacy, hence the Ward Legacy Foundation.
Yeah, and that actually brings up a question Dr. Kenneth, her father Kenneth, asked earlier. He wants to know, why is it essential to carry on the legacy of the Warrens?
Well, because I feel, I've always said this, somebody has to do the work. Okay? Now, and that somebody should be somebody that knows what to do. I think collectively, our foundation, with Father Ken, with yourself, with Chris, with all our other directors, Bill, who's got 30 years experience, collectively, we're a formidable team. We've got clergy involved, we've got doctors, we've got Ph.Ds. I'm just a dumb bastard, but but seriously, with all of our collective knowledge and years of experience, I wouldn't want to be surrounded by a more efficient team than we have. But it's important to carry on the work, because evil's not going to go away. When you're dealing with evil, it wants to destroy us. It wants to wreak havoc in our lives because it hates us. Because we are all, regardless of what faith you have or if you don't have faith, my belief, and I say that because it is my belief, and I don't try to push that on others, but my belief, that I was born and raised Roman Catholic, is that evil exists. God allows it to exist. Okay, Lucifer was once an angel, fallen angel. But because we are all children of God and made in His image, He hates us. The devil hates us, and he wants to kill us and destroy us and ruin us. Ruin marriages, ruin people's job, their finances, and break them down to the point where now I got you, now you're mine. Whereas me, I get an attitude about that, and I said, look, if I'm a child of God and made in His image, who better to have in my corner? Who better to have my six? I'm like, bring it. I'm like, you might slap me around, but in the end, I'm going to be victorious because I have more. God's more powerful than you. And Ed always told me that. He's like, you know what, Joe? He goes, God is more powerful than the devil. He goes, but no man is. Yeah, always remember that line. You probably heard me say it 1,000 times, but it's true. It's true. And with him, in your corner, and having that faith is the biggest weapon. Not physical strength. I'm a big, strong guy, but that doesn't mean anything. I got tossed across the room like I was nothing. But the earthbound spirits, when you go into a home and you discover this is a past loved one that's come at a time of great strife or something to offer you comfort, that's a beautiful thing. Those are the cases that I love, because you see the family brings them to tears, brings me to tears sometimes, because that you can feel so good about yourself, that you've done such great work, that you've helped someone or a family. And that's my payment. That's our payment. Yeah. We don't charge a dime for helping people. That there's no greater payment in the world than to see a happy family, people that can breathe easy again, and know that whatever affliction they had has now been eradicated.
Yeah, but then you have the flip side where I can't. I don't want to say I can't stand doing it, because it's just heartbreaking. But it is heartbreaking when you can't help a client. Like I had a client in Vegas. She was experiencing activity. We investigated the house twice. Other members of my team investigated the house, and there was nothing going on. There was no activity whatsoever. And we found, this brings up Father Kenneth's question is essential to consider the client's physical and mental mindset.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, you want to look at that first.
Yep.
You want to look at that first. You want to always look at something naturally or normal before you go to the paranormal. It's like, I do a lot of investigating before I even decide to take an investigation. It's like, look into the property, look into the home, look into the history of the home, look into the people. It's like you get a family of 5, say, and the wife is saying, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that, this has happened to me. And then the husband's over there like, I don't know what she's talking about. I don't see anything. It's not that she's lying or making this stuff up. To her, it's very real. But it might be all in her mind. It might be self-manifesting. So that's that. It's not easy to discern between that. If it is a mental health issue, I'm not qualified to help you with that. But what I am qualified to do is, you might want to seek some professional help. Medically or psychologically. Some people aren't open to that, and they're like, and then they'll just, scoff at you, and they'll move on to the next. Father Ken and I had a case once where we tried to tell somebody exactly that, and the next thing you know, an hour later, the person was on the phone trying to get another team because they're just looking for someone to believe them and support their story. And then it circled back to Father Ken through a fellow clergy member. I hope I'm remembering this right. And he's like, yeah, within an hour, this person contacted somebody else. After we just spent an hour or so on the phone saying, this is what we think you need to do. You need to go seek this kind of medical attention or psychological attention. Just get evaluated. I'm not saying you're crazy. Just saying, there may be things going on in your life that are causing you to manifest this. One of the first questions I ask people is, how much TV do you watch? How many of these TV shows do you watch? How many of these movies do you go to? You'd be surprised how many people are like, oh yeah, we watch them all. We love them, Well, now it's in your head. How many people out there could say that they can sit and watch The Exorcist by themselves at 2, 3 in the morning in the pitch dark? I laughed my ass off through it, but I mean, then they'll turn it off and now they're freaked out. It's all in your head. And they try to go to bed and they hear something creaking, or they'll see a light flicker, and instead of thinking, well, there may be something wrong with the electrical system, or there might be a power outage down the road, they're thinking, I've got a demon here. It's always they go straight for the demon because that's what TV and Hollywood has conditioned us to think. Everything is a demon. I'm like, that's not true. That's just, it's nothing could be further from the truth.
Yep. Yeah, I know I haven't done as many cases because I've done a lot of behind the scenes research, but in all the cases I've been on, it's never been demonic. It's always been just a pissed off human.
Yeah, demonic cases I would say, are very rare. Very rare. I mean, a very small percentage, but they do happen. We're working on one in Ohio right now, which I think it's not a demon, but it may be something very negative. We don't know because we can't get the client to communicate with us. Yeah. And the regional director I've talked to is like, Joe, I don't know what else to do. I said, then you can't do anything. You've done everything you could. If the client, they need to have some skin in the game. So you just call me up and I'm going to run over with a proton pack on my back and take care of it. I tell clients, you need to help us help you. You need to take a very active role in this. This is your home. This is your family. Take it back. Okay? I can help you. I can guide you. I can support you. But I can't come in. And I said, this is your home. I tell people, just walk through your home and say aloud, this is my home. You're scaring me. You're scaring my family. You're not welcome here. I would like you to leave. Something along those lines. Just walk through the house saying that. How many people are afraid to live in their own house, or at least afraid to go into the laundry room in the basement or the attic to go get some an old box of Christmas ornament? I'm like, are you kidding me? This is your home. You're paying a mortgage for it. You're paying rent on it, and you're afraid to go into a room in the home or the home itself. That is one of my biggest pet peeves. I had a case where these 2 sisters lived in this home. It was a duplex, but they took the walls down and made it one big house. And they had activity going on, and there was some activity there. It wasn't evil, it wasn't demonic, but I went, we set up an appointment, my buddy and I, to get out there about 11 o'clock on a very sunny, 11 a.m. sunny July morning. You remember, it was hot. And I pull up the driveway, and the two sisters are sitting outside. I'm like, oh, ladies, it's hot. You didn't have to wait outside for us. So we're not going in. She's like, we were waiting for you to go here. They didn't want to go in. I'm like, this is your house.
Mm-hmm.
This is your home. And that bothers me when people are that frightened. And that's when you know they're not making it out. You can see the fear in their eyes, and fortunately we were able to help that family. There was something there, but I think it was more residual than anything else. But it was scaring the children, and it was causing poltergeist activity. And we got the activity to stop with Lorraine's help. She was very helpful with us. Sorry, I bounce all over the place, folks, but there's so much stuff that I've been through in these 36 years that, cases pop into my head. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I got to tell you about this one. Oh, wait a minute, I got to tell you about this one. Come to one of my lectures, I talk about them.
I
want to eat up your whole hour here. So
no, that's why I had you on here. So that's that's perfectly fine. And the one thing I did want to bring up, of course, I'm currently writing Haunted Florida Lighthouses, and I've asked you to write the foreword if I ever get that done.
I'm honored. Thank you. I've never written one before, but I'll figure it out.
I have a format I can send you. But
okay.
What is your fascination with lighthouses? Is it the beauty, the paranormal, the history? What kind of...
I am a history buff. I love history, all things history. Historical forts. Matter of fact, Father Ken and I are going up to New York next month, and we're actually leaving a day early. I said maybe we could swing by Fort Ticonderoga in upstate New York. I just love history. I love when there's like reenactments. I could spend a day, looking through the museums and reading the artifacts that they dug up, because that's our history, but I love lighthouses, just the beauty of it, the mystique. It's, they're iconic. The Nubble Lighthouse, which is the Cape Nettic Light in Maine, it's in York Beach, Maine. It's one of the oldest lighthouses and most iconic lighthouses in the world. Matter of fact, I don't know if anybody knew this, but the image of the Nubble Lighthouse was one of the images that was put on the record that went in the Voyager spacecraft, as a testament to man's achievements. So there was like the Taj Mahal, the Great Wall of China, and the Nubble Lighthouse. I just love lighthouses, and if they're alleged to be haunted, that's a bonus. You think about lighthouses when they first came, like Portland Head Light, I think was commissioned by George Washington in 1791. And the shipwrecks that lighthouse probably stopped from happening. They served a very valuable purpose back in the day. Now we just look at them as it's a historical thing, and the light still works, but it's not used for really. And some of them are for navigational purposes, but I'm just drawn to them. I mean, I love the history of them, the beauty of how they're made, the construction. I really someday would love to buy one and live in it. It's just a love of mine. I mean, as you can see behind me, I have some lighthouses. I have, this is my Halloween / lighthouse room, and if you can't see off camera, but I've got lighthouses everywhere. Pictures, some of them I've taken and had them framed. Some of them were given to me. The one on my Facebook page, on my cover photo, was actually painted by an older gentleman that's in his 90s. He lives up in York, Maine, and there's a sailboat that he painted, and he would personalize it. It was a print, but he would personalize it and write my last name on the boat. So anybody that wanted to buy this print, he would personalize it, and he signed it for me, and I framed it. Like St. Augustine Lighthouse, I'm sure you've been to.
I need
Florida.
to get you there.
I was by there once back in 2009 because we were driving through to go to Disney.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was open because we were there early, but I didn't get a chance to go in it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the stories. They absolutely could be true. If I was a lighthouse keeper, and I was in love with it, I might come visit it. But yeah, I definitely want to go there. But it's just a passion of mine. I just love them.
Right, and just south of the St. Augustine Lighthouse and north of the Jupiter Lighthouse, and both are amazing to go see. Totally different. One's huge, one's just this little tiny lighthouse. But in the middle, where I don't know if there's any lighthouses in that area. There's none standing today. I'm in the process of seeing if there were in the past, but Spanish galleon ships, several of them sunk just off the coast, and they call it the Treasure Coast now because you could walk the beach still today and find gold coins just laying on the beach or gemstones. And
I'm moving to Florida.
Mel Fisher, it's not common as it used to be, but you can still people are coming up in the news that they found something from these ships. And Mel Fisher was the one who actually found the wreckage zone. And he has a museum there, and the museum is extremely haunted just from the stuff that he's pulled up from, beneath the Atlantic.
Wow, I'd love to go there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Next time I'm in Florida, you have to take me there.
Yep. Yeah, let me know. It's 5 minutes down from where my parents live. So they're right down the road from where it all happened.
See, I mean, that intrigues me, just hearing that little bit of history you mentioned. Yeah. Anything to do with history, I love. It's just I'm just drawn to the sea and lighthouses, but equally I'm drawn to the mountains. Like my mom used to live in Maine for a few years. My aunt had some land up there. She gave her a piece of land, and we built her a little home. And it was up near Sugarloaf Mountain, which is a big ski resort up in Maine. Maybe you've heard of it. And it was a town called New Portland, Maine. So it was nowhere near Portland, which is on the coast. Well, I used to love to go up there. I like the solitude. Your nearest neighbor is maybe a quarter of a mile down the road. I mean, you're not. It's not like if you lived in Philadelphia in one of the row houses, you could open your window and wash your neighbor's window. I have a touch of claustrophobia, so I like space. But just. Laurel and I we just went in May. We had our 30th wedding anniversary. We took a ride to Maine for a week. And the things that we love to do really don't cost much. I mean, just the cost of gas to get there. We'll pack a picnic lunch, go up to the Portland Head Light, because it's a huge park. It's enormous, Fort William Park. Unfortunately, some of the old buildings that are there are no longer safe to occupy, so they gated them up so people can't go inside. It's too bad. That's history. It's just crumbling. But the lighthouse is still there. And of course, they have the gift shop, way overpriced. But
just like Disney, the lighthouse exits into the gift shop.
Oh yeah. Well, the gift shop's right next door. But I love to go up into the light. Some lighthouses allow you to go in there. Some of them are only open for like National Lighthouse Day, like once a year. They'll let folks in. We were lucky enough to go up to the Pemaquid Point Light, which is actually on the main quarter. If you look in the back of a main quarter, that's the Pemaquid Point Light. And the day that we were there, just as fate would have it, one of the volunteers, an older gentleman, was there to do some painting. And we got to talking to him, and me, I don't shut up. And he's like, come on. He goes, would you like to go up into the lighthouse? Now, I had been in it before as part of the regular tour, but this was just for us. Just let us up there. He's like, take as long as you want. And I'm up there, and I'm like, all right, you can leave me here, Laurel. I'm like, you can leave me. I'm just going to stay here. Just the view, the beauty of it is just, I don't know. It's just indescribable. It's just beautiful. And if you're into that kind of stuff, which I am.
No, I love history, and so I'm anything historical. I'm more drawn to Civil War history, but
I love that too. Yep.
Anything that has historic value, I love. Well, we're coming close to the end of my hour with you. If you want to yeah, I know. That flew by so fast.
Sorry, that's what happens.
That's why I like having you on the show, because I just sit back and you go.
Yeah, Jeff told me the same thing. He's like, I'm just going to ask one question and turn my mic off.
Yep. That's usually how it ends up happening. But if you could just let people know where they can find you, and actually, I'm sure we have some viewers all across the country. Let them know where you'll be speaking in the next couple months.
Okay. Thank you. So I do personal lectures more so in Connecticut. I do a lot of public libraries and things like that. I've been doing it for 20 years. I don't expect people to fly from California to come to my lectures, but I will be in Virginia with you, hopefully.
Hopefully.
The weekend of the 24th for an event at the Beacon Theater in
Beacon Theater in Virginia. Hopewell, yep.
Hopewell. Okay, sorry. Make sure I get that right. And then I'll be at the Dark Waters Paracon in upstate New York. It's in Plattsburgh, New York. and I believe that's the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd of October, put on by our good friend Frankie Frank. He's put a lot of hard work into that, so I hope folks go to that. Come see us. Father Ken and I will be having a table, and we'll be proudly representing the Warren Legacy Foundation. We'll have some items that you can purchase, and then Father will bless them for you. Annabelle will be there. Should be there. I'll be bringing her with me.
Your student Annabelle.
I have the oven mitts for that. I can be found on WarrenLegacyFoundation.com. My bio is there. Thank you for putting it up there.
Yeah. And I'll share all of this as well on my page for people to see.
I also have a group here in Connecticut. I started in 1993 with a friend of mine. It's called the Connecticut Paranormal Research Society. I have a Facebook page, so if you just search Connecticut Paranormal Research Society, you can find my page. Please like it. I've got to do some work to it. I haven't been on it in a little while, so I'm sorry. I've been busy. So I do a lot of lectures. Heather and I have been speaking about doing maybe a lecture tour in the United States, hopefully in the near future.
I'm working on that too.
Well, I appreciate it because
it'll all be announced.
I'm psyched about that. If you haven't guessed by now how passionate I am about this work, and in helping people, and people that do want to come out and see us, so they can't all come to us. So hopefully, we can come to you. But you can find me on Facebook, Joe Frankie, and public.
Well, perfect.
Share.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, for joining us, and I'll make sure I get all the links up on my page. A lot of them are already there, but I'll bump them all back up to the top so that way you guys can all see them. And we are going to take a quick break. Thank you again, Joe, and I will talk to you soon. And I'll see everyone else after the break.
Okay.
This is WLTK-DB Talk Radio.
Come see our new station shop for some amazing top quality merchandise. There is something for everyone, like blankets, electronics, clothing, and much more. Head on over to WLTK-DB.com and click Shop to show your support by sporting our logo. The WLTK-DB Station Shop at WLTK-DB.com. Paranormal talk is our business, and business is good. Want to see your video here? Sponsor WLTK-DB Talk Radio and watch us make that happen. With your paid sponsorship of $80, you receive a professional produced audio, video, and banner placement on our station. Not only does your sponsorship air during our live shows, but also replayed on our podcast and heard by hundreds of like-minded people. Visit WLTKDB.com to get started and find out just how hard we work to get you noticed.
The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I am so hoping that you guys enjoyed having Joe Frankie on the show. He is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure he'll be back on again. And like I said, I will make sure I get all of his information up so that way you guys can follow him the Warren Legacy Foundation as well, and see what's happening over there. One question that was brought up just before we're closing out with Joe is Joe or any of the Warren Legacy Foundation members going to be attending the Warren's Paracon in Connecticut? And unfortunately, our group will not be there. That is run by Nesper, which is Ed and Lorraine Warren's daughter and their son-in-law. Tony Spera actually runs that, and we are not a part of that, unfortunately. So you will not see us there, but I've heard some great, amazing guests will be attending that Paracon. But stay tuned, because the Warren Legacy Foundation does have a lot of things planned, and you never know what could be popping up soon. One thing we did run out of time is Joe's daughter wrote a really amazing book, and I absolutely love it. I know several people who have read it who absolutely love it, but Emily Frankie and his daughter, or Emily Frankie and his other daughter, Haley Frankie, illustrated it, but it's the ladybug who lived on a four-leaf clover. And this is a children's book just talking about the death of a lost grandparent and dealing with it and visitations. And I don't even know, I'm starting to tear up just talking about it, which is probably a good thing. I didn't talk about it when Joe was here because he probably would have teared up. But if you get a chance, I can put Emily's link there as well. Emily is just an amazing person. And she wrote this book in loving memory of her grandmother who died last year. So if you guys have children, I actually am ordering 2 of these because my cousin's mother-in-law just passed and she has 2 young girls. And I thought this would be a cute, just a cute book to help them get through it. So again, it's The Ladybug Who Lived on a 4-Leaf Clover by Emily Franke and then illustrated by Haley Franke. Absolutely. As an adult, I loved it. I've read it several times and it's just a really, really impressive book. And I'm trying to find a place to put it. Okay. So I do want to touch real quick a little bit on what we talked about. And, everybody in the paranormal field has different views. We talked a little bit about the different shows that are out there and they are for entertainment purposes. And except for if you watch them with an open mind, I know we talked about the open mind at the beginning of the show, but if you watch these shows with that open mind, you could take some information from them, such as their experiments. And I have several experiments, a long list that I've actually gathered from television shows, and I will go over those and show you how to tweak them to either actually work for the paranormal and not be for entertainment purposes, but to also kind of guide you and make sure that you're doing your research properly and collecting the actual evidence and all of that different things. And so if you guys have any questions, I'm still here for another 25 minutes or so, but I do have a few other things that I wanted to touch on. The one thing I had talked about earlier, and Joe even touched on it, is almost ethical, I want to say ethical basis for paranormal researchers. He was talking about how teams go in, get scared, run out of the home, make matters worse for clients. We didn't have time to talk about it, but I wanted to bring it up where we were, I don't know if it's a case anymore or not because it was passed off to someone else, but we were working on a case in the foundation. And when I started the research for it in the beginning, before I had to step aside from it, is the client came to us saying they're having paranormal activity. And when they sent us everything a former team had sent them, because they were 100% dead set that they have activity. Still don't know if they have activity or not, but the photos that they sent us were not only published on this other team's page, they were also faked. And you could clearly, either they were faked or unintentionally faked because there was something wrong with their camera. Because if you go through the entire timeline of this team's page, you can see photos from 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago that had the exact same markings that they were telling this client was a ghost. So the one thing, no matter how much you want paranormal activity to be happening, do yourself to protect yourself. Don't, like Joe said, keep your ego in check. Don't do things, if a client really says that they have paranormal activity. The one case I was talking about was, it was heartbreaking. I actually had to step away from it and tell her, sorry, we couldn't help her because she wasn't helping herself. And there was no evidence of paranormal activity anywhere in her home attached to her or anything. It doesn't mean she was not having activity. No, her pain was real, but it meant that it just wasn't showing itself to us and we weren't detecting it. So we had no proof that there was paranormal activity. And she refused to, just talk to her doctors to see if there were underlying conditions. So when it comes to that, we can't help her. But I also, knowing she wanted paranormal activity so bad in her home, I'm not going to fake the evidence to make her feel comfortable or to confirm her thoughts. And that's what I feel a lot of teams do, is so many people want paranormal activity that they're going to fake it. And I see it in the groups all the time, hey, check this out, but it's clear it's an app, those iPhone apps and the ghost apps that you can put the little ghost images over your photo. There's this little girl that I've seen haunt a Nevada courthouse, a Nevada park, a Florida office building, and then I think somewhere in the Midwest. And it's the same girl in all the photos. And she's either very active in the afterlife or a lot of people are using these apps. And I tend to believe that they're using the apps. It's all fun and games. If you guys don't want to do this for the right reasons, that's fine. You can still go to your haunted locations, but just be careful. Don't stir up trouble. Go to the locations like I used to do when I took time off from the paranormal years ago. I would research the historical locations. I would go visit, but I wouldn't conduct any type of research. I would be there to take photos, take video, and learn more about the history and get a feel of what's happening. So that's all fine and dandy. I mean, these places are interesting. It's the people that go, like Joe said, they go to these places, they use a Ouija board, they stir, and they don't even know, some people don't even have never used a Ouija board before. They're actually going to these locations and opening the box that they purchased from the storage on their way to the investigation. So just make sure you know what you're doing and you're thoughtful of your surroundings, thoughtful of the spirits, the humans that are actually still living, and of the location. He had mentioned, make sure you get permission to go somewhere. I always tell people, make sure you have written permission to be somewhere and with the time, because a lot of cemeteries close at night. And if you get written permission to be there, make sure it says they have permission to be there from X time to X time, and carry that with you. So that way, when the police do show up, or if they show up, you have proof that you are allowed to be there. You want to make sure that you cover your back, and also never go alone. You never know what can happen, even not paranormal. You never know if you fall through a hole. Not so much here in Florida, but in Nevada, you never know what lurks in the different caves and mines. You could fall. I mean, there's mines that say it's near bottomless with the shafts if you fall down. So just be careful. Let people know where you're going, when you're going. And it's an interesting road. And if you're really in this for the right reasons and truly want the answers and truly want to help people, then take your time to do the research and truly help people as much as you can. And I'm just looking at other thing I wanted to bring up. And then I should have planned a little bit more, but it's a protection tip. I had talked earlier about sage and protecting yourself when you go. And sage is a Band-Aid. I know someone had mentioned that comment earlier. But I truly believe that if you just need that little bit of boost to change your mindset. So sage will help cleanse the air, change the air. You kind of need to, it's more or less a stepping stone if it's done right. You can step yourself from being in a bad mood to just getting a little bit better with the sage. And then that puts you on the right track to actually having a good day, or, actually getting rid of paranormal activity. So what I do, and I carry with me everywhere I go, especially in investigations, is, and I will share the recipe that I have for this, but I call this it's my Make Me Happy Protection Spray. And it has rose water, sage oil, of course, citrus oil, which citrus is known for making you happy and changing your moods as well. And then it has witch hazel. And I think the witch hazel I used is the rose infused witch hazel. And I use non-alcoholic. So that way you could take it on planes with you, or, in your suitcase, because you're not really, if it's alcohol, I checked with the post office. So that's why I don't use alcohol too, because if I ever ship these out to anyone. And then of course, I don't know if you guys can see or hear, but there's little quartz crystals in there as well. And I did it for the show. I sprayed my whole area here. I sprayed myself down. I also made roll-ons. I carry them with me. And this more or less, if I feel negative energies coming onto me during an investigation, I'll pause. And like with the roll-ons, I'll put the roll-ons on my wrist and behind my ears. If I have the spray with me, I'll just completely spray the air and walk through it. This enhances my self-possession, which I talked about. And I know I've touched on a lot today. And moving forward, each episode is going to focus on just a little thing or just one thing from each thing. Like we are going to talk about self-possession for a whole episode, and my guest is going to help with that. We're going to talk about the scientific method and the paranormal in an episode. Ethics, paranormal ethics. We need to make sure we cover that, because there are so many teams out there that just, I don't want to say they're not ethical intentionally, but they follow what they see on TV shows. And sometimes the TV shows don't show the whole story. It's not saying that the TV shows are unethical. They just don't show the whole story, so the viewers don't know what happens behind the scenes. And just a whole bunch of things are going to be going on. So I do want to touch back on, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes, but I do want to touch back real quick. The one thing we never did get back to was Annabelle. And it goes to, Florida water. Love Florida water. Actually, I keep forgetting. I know, Father Kenneth, I need to get you that recipe, because I actually have a recipe to make your own Florida water. So I'll make sure I get that to you, and I'll put it up on the page as well. So, but going back to Annabelle, more or less the thought forms is you want to make sure that you, even going into an investigation, that you have an open mind. I know I always say that, and I'm always repeating myself, and I feel like because I'm so nervous for the first show, I feel like I keep repeating myself on it. But like Joe said, he's passionate about this, and so am I, and we're all in this field for different reasons. I actually think that Father Kenneth had asked earlier before I brought Joe on. Let me scroll through real quick. What do I like most about the paranormal? And my favorite thing, I know everybody has their own reason. A lot of people, of course, we all like to help clients. We all love to, do the investigations, but mine is the behind the scenes research. I said it earlier in the show, I truly and want to develop a scientific method that this field can use. So that way, just like a physicist or a chemist, they have a set pattern. And then when they share it, other scientists use the same method. So they're able to cross, check data. If we in this field use one set method, or it doesn't have to be everybody, but if we use similar processes for our investigations, similar processes for our documenting, that's going to get us so much closer to being able to prove how and why. Is the paranormal, this is another topic I'll bring up on a future episode, is the paranormal us interacting with another world? Is it when the two worlds, cross each other, parallel worlds cross? Or, because I truly do. One theory I have is I believe we're on wavelengths. And what we consider or residual energy is just us crossing, wavelengths. And we're encountering at that point in time, that's when it happens. That's why you have residual energy that can happen same day, same time, or same time of the month, with the full moon, with the new moon. There's so much that we can do in this field. It's near endless. And I wish I had started the methods that I'm working on now earlier, because I feel like I'm behind the curve when it comes to wanting to get the things done I need to get done this late in life. But I truly feel, do what makes you passionate. So if you like helping clients, go help clients. It's not that I don't like helping clients. I just have been heartbroken so many times, like that case I told you about in Nevada, when you have the person on the other end of the phone crying. I'm not crazy and appealing to you and begging you to help, but we can't. It's so heartbreaking, especially if the clients don't want to help themselves, because all they can focus on is their pain. It's the hardest thing in the world. So not my favorite thing to do, but I will, and I can, and I have done it. I prefer the educating other people. I like this. This is why I do this show. I used to host Exploring the Paranormal on Wednesday nights every other week, and that one is actually being replaced by this show. I've also hosted Ghost Education 101 since COVID started. I've been doing that with my co-host Philip Wyatt, and we've also had other educators who join us to share our paranormal experiences. And Ghost Education 101 is still around. It's just we're revamping it because we don't have the time to sit on a strict schedule. So I will post on my page as well, the YouTube page for that, because we're going to just make videos when we both have time, and we're going to post them directly to YouTube. So we'll be doing that. And then, of course, we have the Warren Files. That one also focuses on all the different members of the foundation, helping, sharing experiences, and just really trying to stop the fear. We want everyone in this field should focus on stopping the fear. Even I hate keep going back to the TV shows, because it's one of those things where I know a lot of the people on these TV shows. I'm friends with a lot of them. I've been on, in 2 documentaries, and and I've even we filmed a pilot once years ago, and it's nothing wrong with it. It's just how the production company pushes people to do things. And like Joe said, it can cause negative effects. I know several people in the field who are suffering from health effects. One person, all of his organs, and I'm hoping to have him on the show one day, so I don't want to really name his name just in case. Oh, thank you so much. I hope you really enjoy it. And one of these days, I'm going to work on a schedule, and hopefully we can get more information and I can focus on one topic. But today, this was new, nerve-wracking, and honestly came up awful quick. I knew it was coming, but I didn't expect that September would be here as quick as it was this year. And but anyway, getting back to the friend of mine, he suffered major paranormal organ damage. His organs were shutting down, and it wasn't looking good for him. But luckily, he was able to turn his health around and is still with us. But that can happen in this field. And hopefully I can get him on the show so he can discuss what happened and how it happened and give more information as to kind of how to avoid it. And that's the problem with the shows, is they focus on agitating. And if, you know, yeah, you do need to kind of, not agitate. I'm not saying you need to agitate them, but you do need to kind of open up and talk to them, encourage them. Just one quick tip before we go, we have about 10 minutes, is one thing I do in investigations, and a lot of people have told me that it almost looks like I don't know what I'm doing. But believe me, I know what I'm doing. I'll set up all the camera equipment. I'll put the digital voice recorders in certain places, and I find a quiet corner to hide. And it's not that I'm hiding from the spirits, or from, you know, anything that could be happening. I want to have a point of view to where I can see everything going on. I want to be able to see the investigators that are there asking questions. And I just kind of want to just feel what's happening. There are times where I'll even just close my eyes and just sit back. And I get more experiences, more interactions by just kicking back and relaxing, because I feel it makes the spirits comfortable. And the other thing I also do is when I'm conducting EVP sessions, I don't start off with the who are you, what's your name, you know, where are you from, any of that. I'll introduce myself. I'll, you know, tell them who I am, what I do. I'm not there to harm them. If they want to talk to me, they can. If they have any questions, because we'll do burst sessions, or we'll use the spirit box, which I like the spirit box, but I'm not 100% fan, because that thing gives me headaches. I don't know about anyone else, but I can't stand listening and reviewing evidence with that thing in the background, because that just gives me headaches. Even though I've had some good evidence come from that, it's just, I don't know. I definitely need to take Tylenol after reviewing evidence for that one. But I'll tell them they can ask any questions for me. And I've actually had some questions come through. And I think they just want to be treated normal. They don't want to be a show. They don't want to, oh yes, I love, actually, dowsing rods. I'm going to have to, one of the shows that I'm going to do is non-tech tools, and actually since it's here, because I've been fidgeting with it all day, anybody who's followed me for a while know I use fidget spinners for my investigations. I'll set them down. I have all different colored ones. They're light up so you can see them in the dark. If you choose, you don't have to investigate in the dark, but if you choose to, and they spin freely, and the ghosts actually use them. I was shocked. This was introduced to me by someone who came to an event I was hosting. She's like, hey, can I show you something? And she pulled it out, and we started talking, and it started spinning. Totally floored me. And ever since then, I think I have 10 now in my investigation kit. And and like Jeff said, he prefers the tech table, where he likes to sit back and just watch what's going on. To me, that's the best way to get interaction. And that works too if you have multiple days. You know, my sitting back and just waiting, if you have multiple days, day one, you sit back and you wait, and you and you can start using them for other things too, Kenneth. They're great for investigations, trust me. And yeah. So anyway, as you guys can tell, I do get a little sidetracked. I do tend to babble, but that's fine. Feel free to stop anytime if you have questions during any of my shows coming forward. And I truly look forward to doing more. And I will keep you guys all informed as to what's going on. I know Joe had mentioned we're supposed to be talking with Flumery Promotions, Flumery Promotions at the Beacon Center in Virginia. We're doing an investigation there on the 24th of September. And I believe it's Joe, Father Kenneth, and Chris McKinnell will be there. And I think we have a few other members. I think, Jeff, you said you were driving in, and we'll all be there doing an investigation. We're hoping that I can be there. I'm postponing a knee surgery, but we may be doing other procedures to where I can't fly to get there. So we're not sure if I'm actually going to be there, because I may be out of commission for a couple weeks to a couple months. I'll know more at the end of this week, but all of it's on my page, or you can find the Warren Files. And it's the Warren Legacy Foundation on Facebook. You can also find us at the Warren Files on YouTube. You can follow my Facebook page, which is at Dr. Heather Leigh, spelled just like it's on the screen. You can also, I thought I muted everything. You can also find this show, Exploring the Paranormal Show, on Facebook, as well as on WLTK-DB Radio. It's posted there. And thank you again, Todd, for having me. I've actually, as nervous as I've been, I am so glad I did this. You can find us basically anywhere, and I'm looking forward to doing this every week. I've been fidgeting and debating on what my topic is going to be next week, but it's going to be one of two things. So I need to find out which guest, because I have a couple different guests that are wanting to come on with me. And it's either going to be the scientific method and how to use it for the paranormal field, because I have written several articles on this, including one for the Real Paranormal Magazine UK 2 years ago, talking about how we can use the scientific method for the paranormal field, even if we can't get the same results. Because the one thing that people say we can't use the scientific method is because of that test and retest thing. But you can still test and retest. You just might not get the same results. And that's what we need to realize, is it's not always the same, but you can still use the scientific method. Or the other one is, I just kind of lost track, but anyway, I'm leaning towards that one. Oh, the non-tech tools, because I have a lot of people question me on the non-tech tools. I've done several presentations on it. I've taught it. And I'm trying to get a guest on, because the other topic I really want to cover is the book I just wrote. And I don't have one to show you. I just sold out. At the one event that we were at, I only had 3 copies, but I sold all 3. I do have more coming on the way. But my book, Haunted Southern Nevada Ghost Towns, I am hoping to get the owner of the Florence Mine on the show one day. And he never really was a paranormal believer, but he is now. And the only issue is the 3-hour time delay. He might not be able to get on at the time I'm doing it. So I'm trying to get him. If not, I do have several other people involved, including a friend of mine, Larry Lawson here in Florida. He's a former Indian River County Sheriff, and he has done several investigations, and he has a team. He owns a tour company, and he's done a lot of investigations at the St. Augustine Lighthouse, which is a topic that I also want to cover. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. I'm going to wrap things up here. I truly appreciate it. Just looking at some of the comments I see here, I do appreciate your kind comments, everybody. As you can tell, I was a little nervous, but I do appreciate the positive feedback, and I hope you guys enjoy the show, and I hope to see you guys here in a week. I usually say 2 weeks, but this is a weekly show, so I'll see you guys next week.